workforce because we need them.
So what I'm hearing, the underlayment here is that perhaps there is a barrier in that our employers are not aware of the train that's going to hit them?
No,
or
I think
creative ways of how to use disabled workers in order to address these immediate needs.
we are aware of this flow of workers leaving the marketplace and the need to replace them and to look in non-traditional areas. And folks with disabilities is one of those non-traditional areas. So what can we do proactively to help these folks? Well, we need college educations. We need to make sure that they get in their college educations.
Okay.
Now, we're going to hopefully get them in math and science because we're selfish. But
Yes, Helena.
I'd like to
Helena Goldstein.
I'd like to actually bring it back to a little bit about what Berthy was saying, but more to a Rhode Island perspective. Actually, one of the slides that Martha had in her PowerPoint presentation shows that in the very beginning of the Social Security program, if you look at slide number 2, there was, in 1960, the trial work period extended to SSDI beneficiaries with disabilities. So from the very beginning in Social Security, there was this philosophy that you could go back to work. You could try to go back to work. And I think that what winds up happening is that the process for getting onto Social Security disability basically creates a sense of you have to be permanently disabled in order to get onto Social Security. And I think that philosophy exists today. And with all of the different laws that have been passed, that general philosophy, that general reason and how you get onto Social Security, the definition of disability, which is tied to substantial gainful employment, is really creating a huge barrier in it for people understanding how it seems so inconsistent. On the one hand, in order to get disabilities, you have to be permanently disabled. You can't make so much money, more money than this. And then on the other hand, there's these other programs that say I'm supposed to go back to work. We did a survey, a very small survey here in Rhode Island. It's in your packet. We have an issue brief on 1619 A and B and how it's working in Rhode Island. And one of the things that's really unsettling is that 50% of the people that we called within the Social Security field offices didn't know about the programs. So here in the Rhode Island area, so when you're talking about, people feel insecure, people don't trust, when people are looking to go back to work and they're calling the people that they think are going to be able to give them the best information, but somehow that information isn't really there. And I think it's not there because the programs themselves are almost inconsistent with each other. Mm-hmm. So there is that huge problem.
So we have inconsistency in programs.
Within the Social Security programs
we
themselves.
have an outdated SSI philosophy.
SSDI.
Yes, SSDI, sorry. And
not outdated, just not updated.
Not updated.
On the definition of disability. On the definition of disability. And I think that's the crux. Everybody around this table can tell you that in order to get in the Medicaid buy-in, you basically have to pretend that one little segment of the rules of what makes you disabled under Social Security, you basically ignore. And all of the states in the country that have these Medicaid buy-ins are ignoring those rules, and that's substantial gainful employment. In Rhode Island, you can make up to $50,000 and be on our Sherlock plan, which is our Medicaid buy-in. $50,000 is going to be most likely over your substantial gainful employment. And therefore, you wouldn't be considered disabled under Social Security, which is one of the rules in order to become eligible for the Medicaid buy-in. So I don't know why anybody doesn't trust any. I mean, it's crazy. So, and we're sitting here, and I think one of the frustrating things is that we got to talk. Let's talk turkey, folks. What do we need to be doing here in order to make this a rational system, so that the people who are advising people to go back to work and the people that are hearing this don't think, this doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm going to let Sandy have some airtime. Sandy Lubovitz, and he is representing employers. Sandy?
I feel like a real minority here because I would say 90%, 95% of the participants are from an agency or an institution, but not an employer. And what I see here is a real lack of coordination. Everybody's going in a different direction. I always look at this from the what I call the Bonnie and Clyde perspective. When they asked them, why do you rob banks? The answer was, because that's where the money is. And when you ask me, why don't more employers hire people with disabilities? I say because they don't go there. That's where the jobs are. But we're not including employers into the whole scheme of this lack of planning. And what I'm talking about are things like, we've been trying to get a quotation from Blue Cross since November for our health insurance in our company. And they've been jerking us around with that since then. One of the things that they require is a census of our company, and when you fill out your application, you have to indicate on there what health experiences you've had or require and so forth. So an employer is going to look at that and say, if I hire 10 people with disabilities, bingo, my whole plan is going to go through the roof, because they take each company individually and quote a rate. And that also would apply to liability insurance and workman's comp insurance. What if something happens on the job?
Okay.
All of these, I think my recommendation, let's put it that way, is that we bring more employers into the scene here. We hear from them, and we also get them going on this, because the baby boomer thing is going to whack many of the companies, as Steve has said. I think about 2 years ago, Steve Kitchen gave a presentation at one of the meetings I went to, and said exactly what I'm saying here, Steve. There's coordination. There ain't none. And we need a plan.
Let me just give some feedback here. I'm hearing that there are barriers because employers aren't necessarily included in the discussion, although we have good representation here with Steve Timborough from Raytheon. Also, I'm hearing that there is extension past the point of the employment, which is affecting workers' comp laws.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you went to if you were to pull 10 employers into the room and ask them why don't you hire more people with disabilities? One of the concerns they will have are their insurance.
Their insurance
health,
levels.
Work comp, liability.
Gotcha.
Right. I'd just like to throw out one other thing, and that is why we're not doing a lot better job on connectivity. I have a daughter who works at home. She's not disabled. She's been working at home for 2 years. We're tearing our hair out trying to figure out what to do about transportation. You don't need transportation if all you have to do is go from one room to the other and work. And I'll add to the button pusher, computers. And this enables people to work at home.
Absolutely. So again, it was more of a commentary that you were making with regard to insurances, that employers may not be educated as to what the workability is. And once they were educated, they might be more open to hiring workers with disabilities.
Well, right, and I think we have a job to do with the insurance companies, chambers of commerce, education, right. And we find that in the Business Leadership Network. What we do in between the meetings is more significant than what we do at the meetings. In the last 2 months, I've recruited 5 major companies in this state to come on board. Because I took them one at a time and explained to them, point by point, this is what we do. And hey, pal, in the next 10 years, you're not going to have applicants. You'll be walking the streets with applications over your head.
So I'm hearing we need more ambassadors. Possibly. Okay, yes. This is Dawn Wardega, Family Voices of Rhode Island.
I just wanted to tie into some of the last comments as it relates to health insurance in general. One of the many policy boards that I sit on is, I sit on the Rhode Island Advisory Committee to our Office of the Health Insurance Commissioner. overseeing primarily commercial insurers in the state, but my role there, and my role is always primarily as an advocate, but my role there is more about, as we discuss at those meetings, some of the ins and outs of commercial health plans, primarily. I always come back to the same thing, and it's got to do about if we're the insurance commissioner's advisory committee, and we're making decisions that will impact directly commercial insurers, that in fact, in my opinion, will only add to the isolation and the segregation of all people in terms of coverage, in terms of health insurance coverage. It shouldn't just be about Medicaid and a Medicaid buy-in. It should never be just about that. It should be, as long as commercial insurance is tied into specific employment, and these employers find themselves in the positions that how their rates are set is based on the utilization of their employees and their dependents, as the case may be, then it's too high a risk for an employer to take. To say that, I mean, I've actually, and again, I work primarily with families of children and youth, so I see it from a slightly different perspective in that I've worked with many families over the course of the last 15 years who have lost employment because their child's utilization of their health benefits was over and above what the insurer or the employer was comfortable with, because clearly if the utilization is high, next time you go around and you set rates, then what happens is they look at your utilization over the last year. So there's this real disconnect, number one, in my opinion, and I know this is not necessarily a health insurance debate, but when we think about what the major obstacles are to employ people with disabilities, and quite frankly, I am most concerned about our young people that are growing into adulthood, that basically